Imagine you're, on your computer, and you've just finished reading this really long article.
Right.
And you go to close the internet browser tab. You click that little X, and you get that tiny, satisfying sense of completion.
Oh, yeah, best feeling.
But instead of closing, the tab just refreshes. It actually forces itself back open, pinging you with, 3 new updates, a revised terms of service agreement, and like a slightly better alternative to the thing you just spent 20 minutes reading.
Sounds like a nightmare, honestly.
It is. So you dutifully read those, you try to close it again, and it just reopens. That endless loop is exactly what modern decision-making feels like for most of us.
It really is.
So today we are jumping into a really fascinating deep dive on a structural analysis document. It's titled JD-01, When Choice Erodes Judgment. And our mission today is to figure out why society has made it seemingly impossible for you to ever actually finish choosing.
Yeah, and the distinction made in that document completely reframes how we look at our own, daily exhaustion. Because what JD-01 argues is that the real problem we're facing is not that widely accepted concept of choice overload.
Right, the whole too many options thing.
Exactly. The core issue is actually that our decisions are being repeatedly, and I mean structurally, reopened by the environment around us.
So it's not just us.
No, we are living in a system where these phases of comparison, confirmation, updating, and retention, they're just stuck on a permanent loop.
Okay, I want to push back on that initial premise right away, though.
Yeah.
Because, the everyday intuition we all walk around with, the narrative we get sold by tech companies and retailers, is that having more choices is the ultimate expression of freedom.
Sure, yeah.
Like if I walk down the aisle at a grocery store and there are 50 types of toothpaste, or, if I'm researching project management software for my team and there are 20 different subscription tiers, isn't that inherently a good thing?
You'd think so, yeah.
Right. It implies I can find the hyper-specific, perfect solution for my exact needs. So if the raw volume of choices isn't the villain here, then what is?
Well, the structural analysis points out that the sheer number of options is actually a massive red herring.
Really?
Yeah. Even if you're staring down a list of 1,000 different options, a decision can actually remain totally manageable, incredibly easy even, provided certain environmental conditions are met.
Okay, let me guess. It's not about the number, it's about having some sort of safety net.
Exactly.
Like if I buy a sweater from a store that has a no questions asked, free 30-day return policy,
Right.
I don't agonize over the 50 sweaters on the rack.
Right, because the stakes are low.
Yeah. I just buy the blue one.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit, I bring it back. The decision feels lightweight because it's safe.
That safety net is exactly what the author refers to as a clear path back after failure, and it is one of the crucial conditions.
What are the others?
Others include having crystal clear comparison criteria, or a really well-defined standard or default option, and, importantly, a hard deadline.
Okay, so boundaries.
Yeah, when those environmental conditions exist, having a lot of choices actually does feel empowering. You filter by price, you check the return policy, you pick the highest rated item, and you just move on. The mental file closes.
And if those conditions are missing?
Then the inverse is true. The analysis shows that having just 3 options, literally 3, can be entirely paralyzing if the rules of the game shift after you make a move.
Oh, man.
Or if there's no default standard, or if the decision is completely irreversible.
I see.
So what looks like a massive expansion of freedom is, in reality, a massive transfer of judgment work onto you, the individual.
The individual just takes on the whole burden.
Exactly. The system, whether that's a corporation, a digital platform, a government agency, they provide the options and they say, hey, look at all this flexibility we've given you.
Right, aren't we so generous?
But they have completely offshored the cognitive labor. You are left entirely alone to figure out the criteria, to anticipate any future changes, and to bear all the risks of whatever the outcome is.
Wow. So it's an illusion of freedom that essentially masks a massive dumping of responsibility.
That's a great way to put it.
If that's the case, I really want to understand the mechanics of how this actually grains us. Because it feels heavy. It feels like you're wearing a weighted vest just to navigate a normal Tuesday. How does JD-01 quantify that weight?
To understand the weight, we have to break down the burden of decision-making into 3 distinct loads.
Okay.
The first one is choice load. This is the foundational burden of just understanding and comparing multiple options. It's what we traditionally think of when we complain about choice overload.
That's standing in the cereal aisle reading the sugar content on 5 different boxes. It takes effort, but it's pretty straightforward.
Right. But the second load is the absolute core focus of this entire analysis. It's called update load.
Update load.
Yeah. Update load is the cognitive burden created when prices, rules, specifications, or really any relevant information change after a decision has supposedly been made.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is the browser tab forcing itself back open?
Exactly. It's not the initial search that drains you. It's the refresh.
Yeah, you made the choice, you mentally close the file, and then the environment just reaches in and forces you to reopen it.
And compounding all of this is the third load, which the author calls responsibility load. And this acts as a massive amplifier.
How so?
It's the burden created when the individual must carry the outcome and the duty to keep checking on it, despite the fact that the conditions for making a good decision were totally incomplete to begin with.
You know, I see this happen in corporate environments constantly. Management will give a frontline worker, quote-unquote, discretion on how to execute a project.
Oh, sure.
And on paper, it sounds incredibly empowering, like, we trust you to figure this out.
Right.
But if management doesn't provide clear evaluation criteria, if they don't provide actual authority, and then the metrics for success change halfway through the quarter,
Then that worker isn't empowered at all.
no, they are just carrying the responsibility load for a fundamentally flawed system.
Exactly. The organization has provided the options, but they haven't provided what JD-01 calls a stable judgment ground surface.
A stable judgment ground surface. I like that. And to think about how often this happens in our personal lives, too.
Oh, all the time.
You finally pick a health insurance plan or, a software subscription after hours of agonizing research. You sign on the dotted line, and then a month later, you get an email stating the terms of service have been updated.
Yes.
Or a new pricing tier has been introduced. Or a competitor just released a much better feature.
Yeah.
You are forced to constantly reevaluate the choice you thought was finalized.
Which introduces one of the most, I think, profound structural concepts in the text, the shrinking lifespan of a decision.
A lifespan of a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of this constant barrage of updates and shifting responsibilities, decisions simply do not last as long as they used to.
I don't think I've ever considered a decision as having a lifespan. It sounds almost biological. Like, I usually think of a choice as a momentary event. You swing the bat, you hit the ball, and it's done.
Right. We tend to view judgment as a single point in time. But the analysis insists we have to treat judgment as a temporal process. It occurs in phases.
Okay, what are the phases?
First, you make a judgment. Second, you temporarily close it. Third, you maintain that closed state for a reasonable period of time.
Okay.
And fourth, you reopen it only when relevant conditions change in a truly meaningful way.
So make, close, maintain, reopen if necessary. The crucial part there really seems to be the maintain phase.
Oh, the maintenance phase is everything.
Yeah.
It is the period where your cognitive resources are actually freed up to focus on other things.
Right.
But today, because of that overwhelming update load we talked about, new info and new alternatives appear constantly. So the valid lifespan of a decision, that period where you just don't have to think about it, is drastically shortening.
It's shrinking.
Yes, your judgment is being eroded not because you lack willpower, but because the environment actively refuses to let your choice stand. Judgment is supported by environmental stability, not just individual mental fortitude.
I can hear a massive counter-argument forming here, though.
Let's hear it.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't having up-to-date information objectively a good thing? Like, if I buy a smart TV and a revolutionary, much better model comes out the very next day, shouldn't I want to know about it so I can return the old one? We are taught to continuously improve our situation.
All right.
It feels highly counterintuitive to suggest we should just remain ignorant of better options just so we can feel done.
It is a totally fair pushback, and the text actually addresses it directly by drawing a really sharp line between continued improvement and permanent incompletion.
Permanent incompletion.
Yeah, yes, the capacity to improve your situation is obviously beneficial. But human cognition has strict biological limits. It operates a lot like a computer's working memory, or RAM.
Okay.
We only have so much capacity at one time. If the environment constantly reopens decisions, demanding that you evaluate and optimize every single choice in real time, it acts like a dozen background apps silently draining your battery.
And eventually it crashes.
Exactly. Your actual capacity for judgment crashes.
So it's essentially a velocity mismatch.
That's a perfect way to frame it.
Yeah.
The environment's update velocity, the speed at which new variables are introduced, is just vastly outpacing our human decision-holding velocity.
Okay, if our decision-holding velocity is maxed out and these background apps are draining our cognitive battery, how do we ever actually get anything done?
Right, because we do still function, sort of.
Yeah, we do still buy the TV, we do still sign the contract. If the environment won't let us maintain a decision, what is actually happening when we finally stop choosing?
Well, we find ways to cope. Decisions still end in practice, but according to this structural analysis, we have fundamentally lost our meaningful stopping condition.
Meaningful stopping condition. Let's dig into the psychology of that a bit. What is the difference between a meaningful stop and whatever it is we are doing now?
So the author contrasts two very different types of completion. First is meaningful completion. This occurs when you can confidently look at a choice, evaluate the variables, and say, under the current conditions, this is sufficient.
You intentionally close the loop.
Exactly. You intentionally close it.
That's the satisfying deep breath feeling of a job well done.
Right. But what we rely on almost exclusively now is substitute completion.
Substitute completion.
Yes. This is when a decision stops not because it has been properly resolved, but because of sheer fatigue.
Oh, wow.
You stop because you hit an arbitrary deadline, you accept a default setting, you surrender to an algorithm's recommendation, or you simply abandon the comparison process completely because your brain physically cannot process another metric.
This is painfully relatable. I mean, anyone who has ever shopped for a home appliance online knows this exact feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
You need a new blender. You think it's going to take 10 minutes. 2 hours later, you've read 40 reviews, you have 15 tabs open comparing subtle wattage differences and like blade geometries that you don't even understand.
And you're exhausted.
Right. Eventually, your brain just blue screens, and you buy the one that has the Amazon's Choice badge, or you buy the first one your favorite tech blog mentioned. Not because it's the best, but because you just want the pain to stop.
That is substitute completion functioning exactly as described.
But the danger there is that it feels like a personal failing. When I just click the default option, because I'm too exhausted to read the fine print on a privacy policy, I feel lazy. Is society just making us less decisive?
The structural view strongly rejects the idea that this is laziness.
Really?
Yeah, the text emphasizes that decision avoidance relying on that substitute completion is often a highly rational adaptation to a high-cost environment.
A rational adaptation?
Yes. Your brain is desperately trying to conserve its limited mental resources. If every small choice requires a massive cognitive output because the environment won't stabilize, you have to find shortcuts just to survive the day. It's an energy conservation strategy, not a character flaw.
Okay, framing it as a biological defense mechanism makes a whole lot of sense.
It does. However, the author highlights a severe long-term danger to this adaptation.
What's the danger?
While it starts as a necessary defense mechanism, if this behavior hardens into a permanent state, the actual judgment pathway in your brain can begin to shut down completely.
Meaning we stop exercising the muscle entirely?
Yes.
We go from saying, I'm too tired to evaluate this software right now, I'll just take the standard tier, to I no longer have the desire or capacity to evaluate anything, ever. Just tell me what to do.
Exactly. You avoid the activation of judgment altogether. You forfeit your agency because exercising it has become structurally too expensive.
That is terrifying.
It is. The critical philosophical takeaway the text offers here is a vital reminder. The fact that something can still be improved does not mean it must remain unfinished.
The fact that something can still be improved does not mean it must remain unfinished. That really is the core friction of modern life, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Because we're living in an era where literally everything can be improved instantaneously. Which, I think, brings us to a massive technological shift that the text specifically addresses. A tool designed explicitly to accelerate this exact problem.
You're talking about generative AI.
We have to talk about AI, because if the core problem is that we are drowning in unchosen possibilities, humanity just invented the ultimate possibility engine.
We did.
Yeah.
And the analysis positions AI not just as a tool that produces answers, but fundamentally as an amplifier of the update load we discussed earlier.
Right.
Structurally, AI can continuously regenerate. It can instantly change assumptions, add alternatives, improve the wording of a document, introduce entirely new perspectives, and reframe risks in a matter of seconds.
You know, the generation phase used to be the bottleneck. If you were writing a difficult proposal, the sheer friction and time it took to draft a second or third version naturally forced you to stop and just pick one.
Exactly.
The friction was a built-in, meaningful stopping condition. But AI completely removes that friction.
Yes. By removing the friction of generation, AI compresses the low-level search phase of any task. The data gathering and the drafting happen instantly.
Which sounds great on paper.
It does. But the consequence of that compression is that it shifts the heavy, exhausting burden of final judgment entirely onto you. It keeps the possibility of another answer permanently available.
I see this in daily workflows all the time.
Yeah.
You ask an AI to outline a marketing strategy. It spits out a really solid option.
Right.
In the analog days, you would have taken that outline, tweaked it, and moved forward. The decision would be in the maintenance phase.
Yeah.
But now, you sit there and think, well, I could just ask it to make the tone punchier. Or I could ask for 5 completely different variations targeting a younger demographic, and 3 seconds later, they are on your screen.
And you're back to square one.
Exactly. The assistance suddenly becomes an assault on your ability to conclude the task.
But the pressure emerges because we begin to internalize a deeply flawed logic. The endless generative capacity of the machine tricks us into believing a new rule. If another slightly better answer is possible, I shouldn't decide yet.
The possibility of optimization becomes a literal prohibition against completion.
Exactly. Now, it is important to clarify that AI itself does not automatically make your decision incomplete. The technology isn't inherently malicious, and the text doesn't frame it as such.
Sure.
But when organizations or individuals interpret generative possibility as a mandate to constantly optimize, AI becomes a massive amplifier of decision erosion. It supplies alternatives vastly faster than we can maintain our previous decisions.
It's that velocity mismatch on steroids.
Yeah.
The AI's generation velocity is light speed, while our human decision-holding velocity is strictly biological. It simply cannot keep up.
And the gap between those two velocities is exactly where that bone-deep exhaustion lives. It is the friction of trying to process infinite variation with finite cognitive RAM.
So structurally, what this means is that we are operating in a severe deficit. If there is one core argument we're taking away from JD-01 today, it's that the inability to make one more choice at the end of the day, whether it's about a multi-million-dollar corporate pivot or literally just what to eat for dinner, is not a personal failure of willpower.
No, not at all. You are attempting to navigate a society and a technological landscape that has systematically stripped away the natural lifespan of decisions.
Right.
The environment is actively designed to prevent choices from closing.
We aren't failing at choosing. We are existing in an environment that actively opposes completion. We have been deprived of the meaningful stopping conditions that human cognition requires to function healthily.
The structural reality is that judgment simply cannot survive on an unstable ground surface. Recognizing that completion is a necessary biological function and not a failure to perfectly optimize is really the only way to understand the fatigue we're all feeling.
It's a huge paradigm shift. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, something that builds on what we just uncovered about AI and the removal of friction.
Let's hear it.
We talked about how AI compresses the generation phase, instantly handing us a menu of highly polished options, leaving us with only the final executive approval.
Right.
But think about how human beings historically build intuition. We develop our gut instincts or deep, unspoken expertise, specifically through the messy friction of exploring bad options.
Oh, absolutely.
We learn by fumbling through a draft, by hitting creative dead ends, and by slowly, painfully piecing together a solution.
The cognitive friction of the search phase is precisely where the learning happens.
Exactly. So if we continue to themlessly outsource that entire journey to a generative engine, if we never experience the friction of generating the bad ideas, and our brains only ever deal with evaluating the final, optimized choices the machine hands us, what happens to human intuition over time?
That is a fascinating question.
If we avoid the messy activation of judgment during the creation process, are we at risk of letting our decision muscle memory atrophy to the point where we won't even know how to evaluate those final choices anymore?
It's definitely something to worry about.
It's something to seriously consider the next time you go to close a tab and find yourself wondering if you should just leave it open to search for one more update. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.